you might notice that the pews aren't quite as full as they were last week. Just laugh about that, but we all know that's the way it is. Easter is a cultural celebration and everybody comes, but the Sunday after Easter, you tend to have people who've been touched by the gospel. They're what was in the big old bird movie? Oh, the priest said at the beginning, oh, few faithful few. The question that always strikes me is when a big blowout celebration of Easter is over, what's next? What do we follow that up? In the lectionary, it's usually followed up with some stories about Jesus appearing to the disciples. How many times have you been in worship the Sunday after Easter and you hear the story of Doubting Thomas? Quite a few. Because when John tells that story, it says a week later, so it just makes sure let's put that a week later. We have it. The problem is that's John. And Mark doesn't have any stories about the disciples encountering Jesus after the resurrection. What we know and feel is the original ending of Mark was what we heard last week. The tomb is empty. The announcement is made, he's not here, he's risen as he told you, he's going to meet you in Galilee, the promise is alive and well. Tell Peter and the disciples to go and meet him there. And then the women, Mark says, were so afraid of all this they didn't say anything to anybody. It just ends kind of on that note of amazement. So in the narrative lectionary, since Mark doesn't have any more, we have gone to Luke again. And the book of Acts is actually Luke's Gospel, Volume 2. He ties it together with the introduction to Theophilus. And here, at least, we do have an encounter with Jesus, the risen Christ, and his disciples. He dialogues with them at the beginning, and then he is taken from their sight, the ascension story. And then we kind of wait pins and needles, what's next? Luke gives us a hint of that. When Jesus says to the disciples, you will be my disciples. You will be my witnesses. You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And when he says that, he gives us an idea of what's next, even as we here in the 21st century on America's North Coast think of that question as well. And I think part of the answer, at least part of the answer I want to invite your reflection on, is found in the grammar. You will be my witnesses. It is not the imperative form of the verb that Jesus employs. It is not a command. It is not, you will, underline, be my witnesses, exclamation point. It's not an order. That means you don't have to join the outreach committee, because Jesus said so. Doesn't mean you have to go door to door, tell all your neighbors about Jesus. It's not a command. What it is, the verbal form is the tense in Greek called the future perfect. And it simply says this, Lord, you'll be a witness. Done. Amber, you'll be a witness. It'll just happen. As you live your life, as you move forward from this point, you will testify to what has happened. And it's not a formula, but it is the living of our lives that the story now will gain expression. He is risen. The grave is empty. He is risen. And as you go out to live your life, somehow you will be telling that story. You will be affirming it, giving witness to what happened on Good Friday and on Easter Sunday with the empty tomb, following a crucifixion, life restored, and life gathered. And the way you live your life, will tell the story. Now when Luke has this dialogue with Jesus and the disciples, he gives a structure to the witnessing. He says, you will witness in Jerusalem, and in Judea, and in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. Fine and good. What does he mean? Jerry, you got your plane ticket for Jerusalem? I know you're planning to go to Belgium. You better turn it in, because he said Jerusalem, didn't say Belgium. No, you will be my witnesses. Where you find yourself at home, that's Jerusalem. Where on Pentecost, we'll hear that in 50 days. And last Sunday, we'll hear that story. And the Spirit is poured out, and the witnessing starts there. And then in Judea, the area around Jerusalem, you're going to tell it close to home. And then you're going to be my witnesses in Samaria. What does that mean? That's a code word. And we have to think of it as a code word. Because there might be somebody you don't like. Are there anybody you don't like? You like everybody. You're so lucky. Most of us have somebody we really don't care for. Maybe it's a group of people, maybe it's a class of people, maybe it's an individual that we haven't liked, but there's somebody we're just not comfortable with. He says, to them too, we'll tell the story. Your life will witness to them too. There's probably somebody with whom we need to be reconciled, from whom we are estranged. Those are our Samaritans. And we will be witnesses there. And when we tell it to our family and to our friends and to our enemies, it will take us to the ends of the earth. We got that covered, don't we? I guess maybe Belgium qualifies, huh? How about Zambia? Well, that qualifies. Sending folks all the way to Central Africa. That's got to be the ends of the earth, of course, unless you're Zambian. And then if you were thinking of this text, you might be thinking, where is the end of the earth? Oh, I know. North Ridgeville, Ohio. Fairview Park. The west side of Cleveland. North Olmsted. Your neighborhood. This is the place most of us will make known in our lives what the risen Christ has done for us. Where we live, where we work, where we are surrounded by so many who haven't figured that out, and to try to oversimplify this, in the midst of everybody trying to run the rat race, in the midst of everybody living by these cultural mores that says it's okay to not trust other people. It's okay to step on others to get ahead. It's okay to cheat as long as you don't get caught. It's okay. The world that says we can do that, the people who've been touched by resurrection and understand the story of Jesus know that there is another value system that is better, that is preferable, because it gives life. It reconciles, it unites, it breeds generosity, it brings forth mercy. The value system that Jesus said belonged to the kingdom of God. The value system affirmed in his death and in his resurrection. The value system that is your and my invitation to be our guide to living. And it will be our living out that good news in the midst of our society and culture that will give witness to the truth of the gospel. death, in whatever form it comes, does not have the final word. That death, no matter how it tries to impinge upon your life, is not the victor here. But Christ is. A victor over selfishness, a victor over the dehumanization of groups within our culture, the victor over our own alienation from one another, the victor over the consumerism of our society and the addictive nature of our culture. That death has been broken. And something new has happened. Easter Sunday. And you and I, having been touched by the word of resurrection, having experienced the mercy and the grace of God, having been united with Christ in a death like this in our baptism, and now being united with Him in a resurrection like this, you and I, as we live out our lives, will be witnesses. We'll tell that story. We'll show friend and enemy alike, neighbor and stranger alike. We'll show them that love wins. And that the reign of God is real and powerful and produces joy and gives us life. You will be my witnesses. Doesn't order it. Jesus just said it's going to happen. So let it flow from you. Let it flow from you. And the disciples seeing him go, having then encountered two other angelic figures who said, you saw him go, he'll come in the same way. Now go prepare to do what he said. What did they do next? Anybody remember the text? This can't be read so well. Anybody remember what Luke says they did next? They went back to Jerusalem just amazed and gathered together and prayed. They gathered together and prayed and waited until the Spirit in power gave them an opportunity to tell the story. So if you're not sure you're ready for this witnessing thing, then go home and pray and wait. And live your life as if the resurrection is true. As if you believe it with your whole heart. Knowing that it's real. And just watch your witness start to change the world.